Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to have a look at some of the suggestions passed to developers for June of 2025 for War Thunder, and this time I thought we'd have a look at some of the aviation stuff. So, it's airplane time, and there's a lot of really cool stuff that actually got passed this time, so let's have a look at it. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe and like the video. Let's get started. The first vehicle is the Messerschmitt Bf-109 T1. This is a carrier-based fighter which was designed for the Kriegsmarine. As early as 1932, the Reichsmarine had planned to procure an aircraft carrier in its conversion plan of the 15th of November 1932, still during the Weimar Republic. For these projects, designated as Carrier A and also Carrier B, the commissioning of Carrier A under the name Graf Zeppelin was planned for April of 1939. Among the aircraft types to be stationed on the new ship was a modified version of the Bf-109 after the development of the Arado AR-197 biplane, which was initially intended for this purpose, was discontinued due to insufficient flight performance. The development of the carrier version of the Bf-109 was accelerated, and after extensive testing, all of which had been carried out at the Travemünde East Station, the technical office of the RLM decided at the beginning of 1939 to further develop the final carrier version of the Bf-109 from the E7 or N series. In this version, the machine could be equipped with a 300-litre additional tank and also had the more powerful DB601N engine. And in order to have more lift available both during takeoff and also landing, the wingspan was increased to 11.08 meters and the wing area increased to 17.5 meters squared as a result of this measure. In the course of these tests, it also became apparent the wing structure had to be strengthened in order to be able to reach speeds of around 750 kilometers an hour without risk during a dive. The problem of landing on a carrier was solved by installing an arrest-to-catch hook, which was supposed to pick up brake cables stretched across the flight deck. In order to enable better control of the landing approach and also precise control of the landing point, so-called lift destroyers were mounted on the upper side of the wing, small spoilers with the help of which the pilot could partially break off the flow of the wings at the appropriate moment. This made it possible to greatly increase the sink rate at the decisive moment. Understandably, the further development of the Bf-109T was closely linked to the construction progress of its potential carrier ship, which of course was the Graf Zeppelin. Launched on the 8th of December 1938, the expansion work was suspended on the 29th of April 1940. Resumed sometime later, all work came to an end by a decree of the 2nd of February 1943 to discontinue the entire launch program. At the end of the great construction progress, the ship was 85% complete. It never reached a ready-for-use condition. After several transfers, the ship was finally grounded near Szczecin on the 24th of April 1945 and sunk in the Bay of Danzig in 1947 after being raised by units of the Red Army. There the wreck was rediscovered in July of 2006. Of the 70 Bf-109Ts built by Fieseler in Kassel between the 8th of April and the 29th of June 1941, only the first 7 aircraft, factory numbers 7728 to 7734, or originally registration RBOA and RBOG, were equipped to the carrier-compatible T1 standard. The remaining 63 aircraft were completed without carrier equipment for coast-based as the Bf-109 T2. After work on the Graf Zeppelin was stopped, the 7 T1s were also retrofitted to the T2 standard, again at Fieseler. Although its carrier ship was never completed, the Bf-109T certainly found its buyers. The aircraft were initially used in a typical naval aviation task to secure the coastal apron and also convoy protection on the south coast of Norway. The corresponding units were the IJG-77, as well as the Jagdgruppe Dronheim, and also a little later the Jagdgruppe Stavanger. The machine was very well suited for the narrow and also short runways of the Norwegian airfields. At the end of 1941, though, the remaining Bf-109Ts were ordered back to Germany. and 45 aircraft were converted to the T1 standard at Fieseler in Kassel. This measure was reversed after the decree of the 2nd of February 1943, and the aircraft continued to serve for a few months in coastal protection with the JG-11 from the island of Helgeland Dune, and at the end of 1943, the Bf-109T of this unit was transferred back to southern Norway, where they proved to be less and less able to cope with the increasingly modern aircraft of the Allies. The last task of the Bf-109T, finally performed almost until the end of the war, was training, mainly in the Night Fighter Squadron 101 and also the Blind Flight School of 10. The next vehicle is the MiG-29M. In the late 70s, Soviet engineers were seeking to modernize the MiG-29 and fix its flaws to meet operational requirements. Their objective was to increase the plane's versatility, range, and improve working conditions for the pilot. Their efforts resulted in the MiG-29M Product 915, which got its prototype making its first flight showcasing its capabilities on the 25th of April 1986. In total, they built 6 prototypes for the aircraft. The final one, known as Blue 156, built in late 1991, which had all the features of the supposed production version, including the full avionics suite and also the ability to fire, which it did in testing, all Soviet and Russian air-to-air missiles of the time, and is the one that also has all the payloads and pictures that are around the place. The 6 prototypes achieved over 1,000 hours of flight in various tests. However, during that time, the Soviets were facing very much economic and geopolitical difficulties that directly affected a lot of military projects. Then, in 1991, the USSR collapsed, together with all of the financing of the defense industry inherited subsequently by the Russian Federation, which basically eliminated any hopes of mass-producing the MiG-29M, despite serial production being recommended several times in the mid to late 90s. If the USSR hadn't collapsed, this plane would have been the backbone of the VVS, just like the F-16C was for the USAF. Unlike variants such as the MiG-29S, SE, and also SMT, the MiG-29M was a deep redesign of the MiG-29, and it is an improvement over the original MiG-29A across many aspects, especially those that were weak points of the Fulcrum. First of all, the original NO-19 Rubin radar was replaced with the much more modern and effective NO-10 Zuk, which is the radar on the Yak-141 that we have in the game, and with it the ability to carry and fire active radar homing missiles. In particular, the Zuk allows the aircraft to track 12 targets at the same time and also engage 4 of them in TWS mode, and with the R-77 active radar homing missile. The optoelectronic suite was also updated with the OEP-RNK-29M, which featured both improved IR and TV search, and also track, and a new laser ranger unit. This not only increased detection range for aircraft, but gave the ability to designate ground targets on both TV-guided and laser-guided air-to-ground weapons. The MiG-29M also featured many improvements focused on improving the aircraft's low-speed performance. The biggest source of improvement for this over the MiG-29A is certainly the new analog fly-by-wire system, with 4 times redundancy for pitch control and 3 times for roll and yaw control, which allowed the MiG-29M to become unstable in the pitch control channel, which dramatically improves the sustainability of high alpha maneuvers. Other aerodynamic improvements included sharper leading edges for lurxes to generate more powerful vortices at the high angles of attack, increased span for ailerons, and increased area for the stabilator. The maximum AOA without disabling the flight control system went from 26 to 28 degrees of the MiG-29A to 30 degrees in testing, with plans to further push the limit given the new airframe capabilities. Still, according to test pilots, the improvement is not only on maximum AOA, but how sustainable, easy, and efficient the flying was of it. Together with this aerodynamic improvement, the more powerful and fuel-efficient RD-33K engines come into the picture. The new engines have a rated bench thrust of 5,495 kgf and also 8,800 on afterburner. and also featured a new duplex full authority digital engine control system that replaced the original RD33 analog control and gave the engine better acceleration. Feeding air to new engines is also an all-new and redesigned and much improved intake system. The MiG-29M ditched the upper intakes and solid protection floors of the original MiG-29, replacing those with downward hinging grids and also perforated walls in the main wheel well to admit additional air with these grids that were raised. A new lower lip that could deflect up to 20 degrees was also introduced to reduce thrust loss at high angles of attack. This new intake system was also controlled by the FADEC. These new engines improved the climb rates to 355 meters per second and improved acceleration despite the new aircraft being 500 kilos heavier compared to the 913. Structural improvements were also made, with the structure becoming welded instead of riveted and many parts being made from composite materials, such as mainly aluminium lithium alloy. The structure being welded and not riveted and the removal of the complex upper intakes created much more internal space. This helped to fix another major shortcoming of the original MiG-29, which was of course fuel capacity, which was increased by 20 to 25%. All this extra fuel, together with the more efficient engines and also aerodynamic improvements, extended the range to 2,200 kilometers. There was also other major improvements that were added, such as 8 underwing pylons instead of 6, increased loadout maximum weight from 4,000 to 4,500 kilos, a new cockpit with HOTAS controls, 2 large MFDs, and a higher position of the pilot to improve visibility, split-style air brake replaced with a dorsal air brake similar to the one on the Su-27, 120 total countermeasures with the launcher placed in the fuselage, and also an improved airframe life of 2,500 hours, and also an ECM, the Gardenia 1FU jammer with 360 degrees worth of coverage. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.
I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.